Welcome and thank you for joining me. You are listening to the account with a report for day 411 of the war in Ukraine. First up, a personal matter. This will be the last report until Friday, the 14th of April 2023. As many of you know, not only did my family grow, but we are also planning on moving. Over the next 3 days, I will have to travel to the new place and do some preparations. As the new place is about 800 kilometers away, I will not be able to do the necessary research for the reports. I will, however, catch up on the reports over the weekend and release summaries of the events. Today I have additional updates on the leaked US-NATO documents. All other updates are grouped into the usual situation inside Ukraine, the occupied territories, Russia and Belarus, and the international developments. Before we start the news though, the flashpoints along the front. Bakhmut. Heavy battles inside the city continue with ever so slight Russian advances. For now, the railroad area is holding as the front line. Ukrainian forces are still trying to break through Russian lines south of Ivanivske and push towards Klishchivka. Oleksandr Syrsky, commander of the ground forces of the Ukrainian armed forces, stated that Russia is using scorched earth tactics learned in Syria. Avdiivka. Ukraine is defending the recaptured territory between Novoselivka and New York and is shelling occupied Novoselivka, Verkhnotoretsk, and the road between them. Russia reportedly managed to capture the forest area south of Novobakhmutivka and push back Ukrainian forces. Natalia Humeniuk, head of the Joint Press Center of the Defense Forces of Ukraine's South, reported that in general Russia is pulling back its troops beyond the reach of Ukrainian weapons. And to start the news segment, more updates on the leaked documents. Ukraine's air defense network is in danger of being overwhelmed unless it is fortified by a large number of additional munitions, according to an analysis of leaked Pentagon documents and US officials. So far, Ukraine's air defenses have proven surprisingly effective in defending the country from Russian attacks and in preventing Russia from gaining control over Ukraine's airspace. Repeated Russian attacks, however, are draining Ukrainian weapon stockpiles, possibly opening the door for Russian planes to inflict damage in Ukraine more easily. One of the recently leaked documents projected that Ukraine's stock of Soviet-era S-300 and Buk air defense missiles, Ukraine's most important air defense weapons, would be fully depleted by early May and mid-April. The document was issued on February 28th, and it is unclear if the assessment has changed. The leaked documents from US intelligence also revealed that Russia promised an extra bonus to troops that successfully damage or destroy NATO-supplied tanks in Ukraine. The documents, seen by the New York Times, say that the bonuses are part of a larger tranche of initiatives structured to help Russian formations and boost morale as they struggle to seize territory in Ukraine's east. The leaked document also stated that videos of tanks being destroyed would be widely distributed to reduce the confidence of Ukraine and the West and reassure Russian troops of their ability to overcome this new weaponry. Meanwhile, CNN notes that secret Pentagon documents posted online in recent weeks show how the United States is spying on both allies and adversaries, which has deeply concerned American officials who fear that the revelations could jeopardize sensitive sources and compromise important international relations. Some documents expose key weaknesses in Ukrainian weapons, air defense, battalion strength, and readiness at a critical point in the war when Ukrainian forces are preparing to launch a counteroffensive against the Russians, and just as the United States and Ukraine have begun to develop a more trusting intelligence-sharing relationship. Ukraine has already changed some of its military plans because of the leak, a source close to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said. A look at all the minor updates out of Ukraine. The Verkhovna Rada voted on April 10th in favor of the general draft law with an amendment that restores the additional allowance of 30,000 Ukrainian hryvnia, roughly $800, to Ukrainian soldiers outside the combat zone. Before the start of the full-scale invasion in February 2022, the management of the Antonov State Enterprise ignored the appeal of the National Guard regarding access to the airfield in Hostomel for the construction of fortifications. In the end, the Russians managed to capture the airfield and destroy the world's largest AN-225 Mriya aircraft. Ukraine has brought back 100 more of its soldiers from Russian captivity. The group includes defenders of the city of Mariupol, the Azovstal plant, and the city of Hostomel. During the Ukrainska Pravda's podcast, 2402 Reconstruction, Defense Minister Alexei Reznikov said that if he had acted according to a certain security protocol at the beginning of Russia's full-scale invasion, he would probably have been captured. According to Reznikov, the secure command post of the Ministry of Defense, where the minister was supposed to go with his team, was located in Hostomel. Ukrenergo, Ukraine's state grid operator, has started electricity exports to Moldova, followed by Poland and Slovakia. Next up, the latest regarding the situation in the occupied territories. Ukraine's National Resistance Center has reported that Russian occupation authorities are having trouble with mid-level officials in the occupied territories of Ukraine. After the Russians' unsuccessful attempts to get the locals to cooperate, they established a system of business trips to the temporarily occupied territories for workers from the Russian Federation. Most of the top positions in the occupied administrations and structures were almost immediately taken by Russians. However, serious problems remain with mid-level officials. Moving on to the news updates from Russia and Belarus. Russian airline Aeroflot has sent its aircraft to Iran for repairs for the first time in its history amid Western sanctions. Alexander Lukashenko, the president of Belarus, at a meeting with Sergei Shoigu, the Minister of Defense of Russia, in Minsk, demanded guarantees that in case of aggression against Belarus, the Russian Federation will protect the country like its own territory. Kremlin-aligned news outlet RBC, quoting Roman Starovoyt, the governor of Kursk Oblast, and Vyacheslav Gladkov, the governor of Belgorod Oblast, reported that the governors of the two Russian regions bordering Ukraine have decided to cancel military parades on May 9th in order not to provoke the enemy by creating clusters of soldiers and equipment. And to wrap up the news segment, the international developments. The German government handed over to Ukraine another batch of military aid, including antenna mast systems, drones, and ammunition. Denmark's acting defense minister, Troels Lund Poulsen, revealed his country's plans to provide Ukraine with Caesar self-propelled artillery systems by next month and 100 Leopard 1 tanks by the summer. The Strategic Command of the Armed Forces of the United States will start its annual Nuclear Command and Control exercise Global Thunder 23 on Tuesday, April 11th. And now for the intelligence report segment, starting as usual with the UK Ministry of Defense. Over the last 7 days, Russia has likely increased its armored assaults around the Donetsk Oblast town of Marinka, 20 kilometers southwest of Donetsk city. Marinka has been fought over since 2014 and has been largely destroyed by artillery exchanges. It commands the approaches to Donetsk and the key H-15 road. Russia continues to give a high priority to resourcing operations in the broader Donetsk sector, including the Marinka and Avdiivka areas, expending significant resources for minimal gains. A look at the latest assessment by the Institute for the Study of War. ISW is publishing a special edition campaign assessment today, April 9th. This report discusses Russia's religious repressions throughout occupied Ukraine since the start of the Russian full-scale invasion of Ukraine on February 24, 2022. Russia continues to weaponize religion in an effort to discredit Ukraine in the international arena and is using information operations about religion to advance military objectives despite itself committing gross violations of religious freedom in occupied Ukraine. Russia may use the upcoming Orthodox Easter holiday on April 16th in an effort to delay Ukrainian counteroffensives by calling for a ceasefire out of respect for the Orthodox religion, despite the fact that Russia has shown no such respect for religion in areas its forces occupy. Russian religious persecutions are likely also part of an ongoing Russian cultural genocide and ethnic cleansing campaign aimed at extirpating the idea of an independent Ukrainian nationality or Ukrainian Orthodox Church. According to the analysts, Russian authorities have closed, nationalized, or forcefully converted at least 26 places of worship to the Kremlin-controlled Russian Orthodox Church of the Moscow Patriarchate, killed or seized at least 29 clergy or religious leaders, and looted, desecrated, or deliberately destroyed at least 13 places of worship in occupied Ukraine. These cases of religious repression are not likely isolated incidents, but rather part of a deliberate campaign to systematically eradicate undesirable religious organizations in Ukraine and promote the Moscow Patriarchate. Ukraine has long accused the Russian-controlled Ukrainian Orthodox Church of the Moscow Patriarchate of serving as the Kremlin's propaganda arm on the religious front. The conflict between the Ukrainian government and the Ukrainian Orthodox Church of the Moscow Patriarchate intensified during Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. And to wrap up the report, the evening update by the General Staff of Ukraine. Despite numerous losses in equipment and manpower, the enemy does not give up waging war of aggression. The enemy continues to focus its main efforts on conducting offensive actions in the Liman, Bakhmut, Avdiivka, and Marinka directions. More than 20 enemy attacks were repelled that day. In the Liman direction during the day, the enemy conducted unsuccessful offensive actions near the settlements of Makivka, Chervonopopivka, and Bilohorivka. In the direction of Bakhmut, the enemy continues to conduct offensive actions, tries to take full control of the city of Bakhmut, fighting continues. During the day, the enemy conducted unsuccessful offensive actions near Bodanivka and Khomove. In the Avdiivka and Marinka directions, the enemy carried out offensive actions in the areas of Avdiivka, Siverne, Nevelske, and Marinka settlements of the Donetsk region without success. The fiercest battles continue for Avdiivka and Marinka. The enemy continues to conduct defensive operations in the Zaporizhia and Kherson directions. The Russian occupiers continue to strengthen the counterintelligence regime in the temporarily occupied territories. The number of roadblocks and patrols increased in Starobilsk, Luhansk Oblast, and around the city. The situation is somewhat similar in the city of Tokmak, Zaporizhia Oblast. Fearing the leakage of information about the locations of the occupying units, the invaders began to restrict certain traffic routes to local taxi drivers. And that concludes today's report. Should you be interested in any of the articles and want to read up on the details, you can find links to them in the description. If you enjoyed the report and found it informative, please consider sharing it with others and giving me a like. Thank you for tuning in and have a great day. You are listening to The Account. Slava Ukraini.